Alrighty, welcome everybody. Great to see you all here today, and welcome to the Partner in Focus session between DIA and Prime Protocol. These Partner in Focus sessions are a series we've launched to bring more visibility to partners within the DIA ecosystem, explore their products, and to highlight the technical collaboration occurring between them and DIA. For those of you who are joining us for the first time or are unfamiliar with DIA, DIA is a cross-chain data and Oracle platform specializing in the sourcing and delivery of customizable data feeds both on-chain and off-chain. DIA's data offering comprises of cryptocurrency prices, NFT floor prices, fair value feeds for liquid staked tokens, random number generation, and more. And all of DIA's feeds can be accessed across 35 different blockchain networks. Today, we will be welcoming one partner that we've been exploring a technical collaboration with for quite some time, and recently finalized and announced this collaboration, which is Prime Protocol. On behalf of Prime, we'll be joined by Colton Conley, who's the founder of Prime. Colton, can you hear me well? And how are you doing?
Can hear you great. Thanks for having me on. Can you hear me
Yeah,
all right?
perfect. Loud and clear. Thank you, and great to have you on. Really excited to dive in and share more with the DIA audience community what you guys are building at Prime. So maybe let's just get started. We always like to start with a background on understanding who we're chatting with. So Colton, can you give us some info about yourself? Maybe where you come from in terms of your professional background, maybe how long you've been in the crypto space, and anything along these lines that you'd like to share?
Sure. Well, I've been in crypto for a while. Initially, it was just personally. I started investing in 2016. I built some arbitrage bots to go between centralized exchanges, and that was sort of my first foray into trading crypto. I ended up taking a bit of a roundabout way to get into crypto professionally, though. During college, did economics research having to do with cryptocurrencies. But over the summers, I worked at JP Morgan and Citadel. I ended up going back to Citadel full time on a macro desk there. But I could never get away from crypto. I was still doing a ton of DeFi in my free time. And at near the end of 2021, I was really thinking it was about time to make the jump and start building something that I really wanted to use personally in the DeFi space. So I left to start Prime, and the idea behind Prime is that all the other lending protocols that are out there, they all basically require you to have your collateral in one place, and you have to borrow in that same place as well. So you end up with a ton of fractionalized liquidity, and there's no way to effectively do cross-chain, cross-margins lending. And what we're trying to do at Prime is we're trying to create a prime brokerage that offers spot liquidity in a decentralized way for people to borrow across different blockchains. And so what Prime enables today is if you go to the app, let's say you've got some staked Ethereum on ETH, you've got some Coinbase ETH on Base, and you've got some Avalanche tokens on Avalanche. Well, you can deposit all of those onto the chains where you have them into the Prime contracts. And then maybe you want to go and farm the incentives that are on Moonbeam right now. You could borrow on Moonbeam and go participate in that ecosystem. That borrow that you take out is backed by the aggregated value of everything that you deposited on all of those other chains. So it's a really seamless experience. You get your borrow with one click. You don't have to worry about finding the right bridge to go over. You don't have to worry about swapping your tokens, transferring them. There's just a whole lot of complexity around managing your portfolio and different liquidation prices that Prime gets rid of. So the idea is it's just one experience that sort of spans every blockchain you could want within the EVM ecosystem.
And I'm really glad you already kind of got into the thick of it here in terms of what you guys are offering, because this is really what makes Prime unique and really stands out among other sort of like lending borrowing protocols here is your cross-chain focus and the ability to utilize liquidity that sits on other networks within Prime without having to necessarily bridge them over or send funds over. That's great. So maybe let's dive into just still keeping it a bit high level here. What are the chains which are currently supported by Prime? How do you navigate which chains to support? You mentioned within the EVM kind of compatible environments. Maybe can you give us some insights? How many chains are supported right now, and what does that look like in terms of a roadmap and how you decide which chains to deploy on?
Well, currently we're live across, I believe, 8 networks. We've got Arbitrum, Base, Avalanche, Moonbeam, Ethereum, Optimism, Polygon, Binance Chain. We've got a couple more that are going to be announced really soon. I think I might have actually already alluded to this on prior calls, but we're going to have 2 or 3 more chains rolling out within the next month or so. So we're constantly expanding. And the great thing about our architecture is it's incredibly scalable. Adding a new chain doesn't add any cost or latency for any of the existing users. So if we want to add, say, something else that is expensive like ETH mainnet, if you're just using Arbitrum and Moonbeam and Polygon, you're not going to end up paying extra gas fees for that, even though it's all cross-chain. So that's where we're currently at. In terms of where we're looking to expand, we're also looking to expand the collateral base. We've already finished all of the code for all of this. And one of the great things about Dia is they're basically helping us be a pioneer in what we can take as collateral by providing us really safe, secure, and accurate cross-chain price feeds. A lot of other Oracle providers, they move really slowly, and it's really hard to get a reliable price feed up for something that's more of a custom use case or a newer interest-bearing token. And the team at Dia is really diligent about making sure that while they never sacrifice quality, they're actually able to get us the feeds that we need on the chains that we need them because of their cross-chain tech stack that I think was done very well. So that's why we're excited to be on this space, and that's where we're headed over the next few months.
Yeah, and thank you for those kind words about Dia. Definitely happy to hear how you're satisfied with our processes and how we can support you with these different types of data feeds, and really want to continue to dive into that later in this discussion and further explain to our audience how exactly we are collaborating with regard to the pricing of these assets. Before we get there, let's talk about another interesting aspect of Prime, which is using Moonbeam as sort of the chain where Prime's master state is hosted. Really interested in maybe providing some more background from your perspective on what this even means, right? So maybe can you share with our audience what this means in terms of having Moonbeam as the home for your master state, and why did you select Moonbeam for sort of exactly this, for this functionality?
Sure. There are a few different reasons. One is we wanted something that was going to be as cost effective as possible for our users. So we had a few options. We could put the master state on mainnet, but that would result in a really long time to finality and really high cost for users. We could put the master state on another chain like Avalanche, which is a little bit more expensive, and we've seen some gas spikes there. Or we could put it on an L2, which is also subject to gas spikes on L1. The cool thing about Moonbeam is that it's a parachain on Polkadot, which is very efficient with the amount of gas that they charge. And so all of our users benefit from the savings by having the master state on Moonbeam. We do all of our intensive computations there. And because the cost is relatively lower than most of the other alternatives out there in the EVM ecosystem, it really provides a huge benefit to people, so they save on gas fees. The second reason why we chose Moonbeam was because of the time to finality requirements. So for those of you who aren't familiar, if you do a transaction on ETH, the blocks can get reordered for a period of time after they've been submitted. And this is a common technique that a lot of MEV bots will try and use, is trying to reorder the blocks to get some favorable outcome for a trade. And Polkadot doesn't have that, where once we've mined the block in and it goes to the relay chain, it's a done deal. And so this means that when you're passing a message from one chain to another, the amount of time it takes to pass that message from Moonbeam to another chain is much shorter than it would be if it was coming from Ethereum. And by extension, a lot of the L2s, there are sort of two approaches that I've seen message passers take. They either wait for the sequencer to publish to L1, or they wait for the sequencer to publish to L1 and then wait for finality on L1. And both of those processes take longer than waiting for finality on Moonbeam. So this basically means that the protocol is going to have less latency and less cost by hosting it on Moonbeam. And the last reason is we wanted to be in an ecosystem that really valued cross-chain applications. I think it's really in the DNA of Polkadot to allow interoperability between different parachains. And it's in the DNA of Moonbeam to allow interoperability between the Polkadot ecosystem and the rest of the EVM ecosystem. The whole idea behind creating Moonbeam was they wanted to create an EVM gateway into the Polkadot ecosystem so builders could basically have a way to get into Polkadot while staying true to their Ethereum roots. And so I think Polkadot was really the perfect fit for where we wanted to put our master chain for those reasons.
I think those are great points and really great insights that you just shared. And even from the DIA perspective, right, joining and playing a role in Polkadot as an ecosystem that really values cross-chain applications is something we can definitely sort of back as well and emphasize as well. That's part of the reason we've played such laid such a focus on our positioning within the Polkadot ecosystem as well. So yeah, really interesting to hear more and learn more about your perspective on hosting and using Moonbeam as the home for the master state. Once again, highlighting that it's gas efficient, the time to finality, and just overall the way that the Polkadot ecosystem favors and values cross-chain applications. So, I mean, I think that's also a good sort of segue into the synergies which we share between DIA and Prime, and sort of, I'd love to explore a little more from your perspective how this partnership came to life. And you already kind of gave some background on using DIA to support perhaps some of these more long tail assets or exotic assets. Maybe could you take us through your perspective on how you see these assets, even how you refer to these assets? You might not even consider them long tail. The ones which we're primarily working with are like mostly liquid staked tokens. And can you share with us background on the types of tokens that you've noticed that we can support you well with, and just overall the process in terms of customizing these oracles and how this may have or may not have bettered your positioning in terms of price feeds and lending borrowing protocols overall?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things the most important thing for us is that we're resistant to any sort of manipulation of the oracles, which could result in a manipulation of the protocol. And the great thing that I love about DIA, it's very transparent where the price feeds are coming from, so we can evaluate the quality of the data sources. And all the DIA oracles, they pull from multiple data sources, which makes it really hard to tamper with them. And when available, it's really high volume centralized exchange sources. And for some of these LSTs, there's also a lot of volume for these things on DEXs. So they include that in the price feed as well. And having multiple sources, I think, really builds up resiliency for what we're taking. And, I wouldn't consider like Lido staked ETH a super tail asset. Obviously, there is like more risk than just holding underlying ETH, but this is something that Aave and every other major lending protocol is comfortable holding. I think what DIA does a really good job of is, some assets in the future that we want to list. It's going to be necessary to look at the reserves of those tokens and maybe do some more custom things to come up with a total value of the underlying asset. I think I've seen a lot of protocols, they'll use like a Chainlink USDC feed, but they'll be using that to price a token that is actually some vault that has USDC inside of it. And the problem you run into in a situation like that is if the vault gets drained or if the protocol takes some loss, you need to be able to take that into account into your pricing so you can liquidate that bad debt and get rid of the collateral. It's not really a problem if the collateral drops in value and you're able to effectively liquidate it. But in order to do so, you need to have a reliable price feed that's looking at all of the necessary information. And I think what DIA does really well is they are able to take a look at all of that. They're able to take a look at data sources across different blockchains, and they're able to aggregate all of that and publish it to Moonbeam in a timely fashion that gives us confidence that the prices that we're reporting on our assets are an accurate representation of the underlying value. So that's why we're really excited to be working with DIA. And we think it's going to, and we're already using some of the price feeds for our LSTs and some other tokens that Chainlink didn't support. And there was no reason for those not to be supported by other oracles other than, they're slow moving, they're not as flexible, and they're not as transparent with how they work. So we're really excited about this partnership.
Yeah, I really appreciate those insights once again, Colton. Thanks for the remarks there and highlighting sort of the benefits of using DIA's oracles and how you guys have been able to make the most out of them. I'm curious, switching back onto the Prime side of things, how do you select which assets to request next? As you mentioned, like there are specific assets which so far we've collaborated on, and even yesterday you and I are discussing, the future outlook of Prime and some which you're considering to add in the future, add support for, that is. What's the process look like for you in terms of which tokens you support?
Well, the process looks like we got to find something that has enough liquidity where we're confident the liquidation can go through. Then we have to have a reliable methodology to price that asset. That's where DIA comes in. And then we've got to think, is there going to be demand to borrow this asset? And right now, because we're in the bear market, I think a lot of this is building up the infrastructure now and sort of proving that everything works so that when we get into the next bull run, this thing can really take off. And so we make sure that we support all of the base assets in an ecosystem, the assets that you would put into a curve pool or would be necessary to go and trade on like a Uni V3. And now we're also looking at what kinds of assets give the most utility to users as well, while still maintaining our rigorous safety standards. And so that's something like a liquid staking token that offers users yields that they can borrow against or loop. So those are really our criteria for how we list assets.
Absolutely understand. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but I mean, the Prime experience is very seamless. So I definitely encourage everybody to go check that out. I mean, we're explaining all of these complex sort of things which you're navigating on the back end here, but on the front end user experience side of things, you've really sort of abstracted this complexity away very well. And so definitely something I would highlight here in terms of encouraging people to go check out the Prime app. But you mentioned sort of preparing for the bull run or for the next, let's say, positive phase in a market cycle here. Let's switch into a forward-looking discussion. So what's next for Prime? Maybe can we explore any future milestones or upcoming developments on Prime's roadmap that you're looking forward to? I know you already mentioned continual expansion across chains, which I'd assume that's probably, if not the most important aspect of Prime's continued expansion and growth. What else are you looking forward to? What other plans might you have for continuing to pioneer cross-chain financial solutions?
Yeah, well, I think the main things for Prime right now is continuing to turn out new chains and assets and building a strong track record. I think that the longer we're around, the more trust we're going to build with the community, and the easier it'll be for us to grow. And that's something that just takes time in the market. And so that's one thing that we want to make sure we do is that we stick around and continue providing reliable service. I've also alluded to some other things that we're taking a look at, like cross-chain perpetuals and some other things that are in development that we'll announce more on once those projects are closer to completion.
So Prime is more than just a lending borrowing protocol in the long-term future, right? You're looking at perps, you're looking at maybe adding functionality for other types of DeFi activities and trading. As you are a prominent founder in this space, and I think one that's obviously to our audience today, right, well-spoken and very well educated and up to speed with everything that's happening in this space. I'd love to pick your brain on maybe some of the overall DeFi or just overall trends within this industry that you're interested in or focused on over the next, let's say, current period or 2 years out. Maybe one thing I'm interested in is like in my opinion, there's a growth in the popularity of L2s right now. And this relates deeply to Prime, right? You're focused on cross-chain expansion and presence on all of the promising chains and ecosystems, yet your home base, or rather your master state, is hosted within a layer 0 ecosystem. And so being Polkadot, of course. And so maybe as it relates to your cross-chain expansion, do you have any insights on what types of ecosystems or chains you think are promising looking forward, whether it's L2s, layer 0 ecosystems, or is it more than that? Is it just everything that has uniquely promising features and functionality, and maybe looking at that in terms of what type of chain it is too general?
Well, the beautiful thing about Prime is that we can succeed regardless of what future plays out, as long as there are multiple blockchains. And I'm very certain that that will be the case. There will be multiple blockchains for a variety of reasons that exist. The question of whether like L2s win out versus a layer 0 approach like Polkadot, or an app chain approach like Cosmos, or a roll-up approach like what Celestia is doing, or Eigen on Ethereum. Like there are a ton of different possibilities here for how people decide to build blockchains for their specific needs in the future. I don't necessarily think that we're going to end up with just a one-size-fits-all solution. I think there's certain pros and cons to each approach, and it really depends on what your use case is. Right now, there's definitely a liquidity advantage to having a layer 2 on Ethereum. Whether or not it's justified, people do perceive there to be more security by settling on L1 and rolling things up into an L2. I think it'll be interesting to see whether fraud proofs are made more accessible to the average user, and we start seeing more of those on the optimistic rollups, which we really haven't so far, or if things move towards more of a ZK future, which I think will really be dependent on continued innovation in the ZK space to make those proofs more efficient, because right now it is very costly to be doing everything as a ZK proof. I think that it also depends, like if your application requires privacy or not, you're going to come up with a different solution. And there are protocols like Manta that are both operating as Polkadot parachain and doing Celestia rollup. You can accomplish a lot of similar things in different ecosystems. And I think it's possible that people will want to port their solutions to different communities. So all of this is to say that I don't have a strong view on whether like how L2s are going to evolve, like whether there will be optimistic rollups in 10 years. I'm not sure about that. I think if the ZK technology continues to improve at the rate that it does, I think everything is probably going to be done that way. And I think you'll see a lot of these optimistic L2s pivot to a model like that, where you're operating with, everything is just being done as a proof that's being published to L1. I do think that there's always going to be a need for app chains with certain specifications. So you can do that either as a rollup or as a Cosmos app chain or as Polkadot parachain. Things that require really low latency, you're going to want to do as your own chain. So I think there will always be a need for things like Cosmos. And I think what Polkadot does really well, which I hope picks up, is interoperability between the chains and a superior shared security model. And so you really start benefiting from that kind of architecture when you build applications that are composable with each other and you build real world use cases for that. I'd say I'm less of a real world asset bull than maybe the mainstream crypto thought is, just because from a regulatory perspective, this is really hard. And I think that the next bull run will probably be driven more by crypto native assets than real world assets that we brought on chain. Because you're like, just from a macro perspective, we're at a point where interest rates are really high. So naturally, there's a lot of interest in bringing on real world assets. But one of the catalysts, I think, for the next bull run will be easing monetary policy conditions, which means that the yields on those real world assets are going to go down and people are going to cycle back into crypto native assets. So all of that's to say, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff happening in crypto. I think you're going to see more L2s, especially ZK L2s, pop up. I think you'll see more Cosmos app chains, Celestial rollups pop up. I think people will continue building on Polkadot. And I hope that people on Polkadot start to build more composable applications, because I think that's really what the ecosystem needs. That's probably like a long-winded answer that didn't have a singular focus, but those are just some of my thoughts on how the ecosystem is developing in general.
I loved that answer, Colton. Thank you for sharing that. No, these insights are great. And I'm sure everybody in the audience really enjoyed everything that you just addressed and added. I mean, really, this is one of the best parts in my perspective and in my experience of working within this space, is that everything is sort of like a case study in live time. Like, we're really experiencing and seeing how things unfold in real time here. Always. It never stops. And there's always continued advancement, and it moves fast within the space. I think you highlighted everything really well. And I think, as you kind of addressed initially, this is one of the best things of being so cross-chain focused, as both Prime and Dia are sort of inherently, which is the future proofing of different types of popular environments, or yeah, exactly, like what types of chains are successful, which garner the liquidity and the mass adoption. Definitely being able to position ourselves and navigate with respect to future popularity is one of the best things of being positioned as a cross-chain application. So I would definitely agree with that, and highlight and emphasize that as well. We're coming up on 30 minutes here on the half hour. And really, this has been a thorough and great conversation so far. Thanks, Colton, for all the insights you've shared with us. I want to just give you a sec to ask you if there's anything I've missed. Anything about Prime that we didn't discuss that you want to add any additional insights or updates in regards to? And if not, maybe we can switch to if we have like any questions from the audience that are pressing. I'd be happy to welcome perhaps one or two people up. But in the meantime, Colton, is there anything that we missed, or anything else regarding Prime?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that I just want to make sure everybody's aware of, if you're excited at all by what we've built at Prime and the project going forward, there's an ambassadors program that we're running, and we're currently accepting applications for this. It's a selective program, but I think the people who are going to be a part of it are going to be fantastic representatives for a cross-chain future. We're going to make sure we take care of them, and I'm really excited for the benefit to the overall community that this program is going to have. So make sure, if you're interested in Prime, you sign up to be an ambassador, fill out the form. we would love to consider your application. And we're looking to build a really strong cohort of folks as core community members. So make sure to check that out. Ambassadors will be earning extra Prime points. Prime points currently you earn by depositing or borrowing on the protocol. And that's our main way of tracking mainnet participation and figuring out who our most core community members are, who supported us from the very beginning. And ambassadors will get bonus points for their participation in the program as well. So there are now more ways to earn points than just depositing. You can also participate in spreading the word and educating people about the protocol.
That's great, and I would safely assume this is the right community to that would be interested in that. As a lot of the listeners we all often have are part of the DIA DAO themselves, and are active contributors to the DIA DAO. So hopefully we can cross over some of our community here, and it definitely sounds interesting regarding the ambassador program that you guys are offering. Are there any specific roles or tasks within that program yet that you want to address or share? Mainly, what could people expect within this program?
I mean, the main objective of this program is to educate other people about Prime and spread the word about it. So I think most of the activities that we're going to be doing with the ambassadors are going to be one of those two items, either educating the existing community or growing the community to new people who could really benefit from our protocol.
Got it. Yeah, that sounds great. And other than that, aside from ambassador program, can you tell our audience and anybody listening on the recorded version, what are the best ways to get in touch with the Prime team or to stay up to date with Prime updates? Would it be just the X handle account here, or any other resources that you would definitely recommend we keep up to date with?
Yep, definitely follow Prime_protocol on Twitter. The account is a speaker here, so make sure you hit the follow button. You should also join our Discord if you want to ask any questions or get in touch. That all of the relevant links are on the Prime Twitter link tree. So go ahead, follow the Prime account, go there, hop in our Discord and say hi. If you are using the protocol and you have any questions about it, feel free to open a ticket or ask in the support channel, and feel free to get to know the other people who are members of our community.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Colton. Really, really exciting stuff that you guys are building at Prime. I'm happy that we can be supportive of what you're building on the DIA side here, and really enjoyed your insights on the call today. Thank you for joining our partner in focus number 2. Thought this was a great session. I think anybody in the audience who's interested, definitely follow up with the resources that Colton just mentioned. And I'm personally really excited to see how Prime continues to navigate and pioneer this cross-chain lending and borrowing sort of space here. And then furthermore, we got some insights into the different types of applications they might be building out under the Prime name in the future. So really, I think this is just only the beginning for the exciting roadmap ahead for what you guys are building. And thanks for coming on and sharing more about that with our audience today.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed chatting, and I think what you guys are doing is awesome, and we're really excited to be partnering on this.
Likewise. Yeah, it's been nothing but an absolute pleasure here. Colton, thanks again for joining us, the Prime team. Thank you all for being great partners, and it's been such a pleasure. And thank you everybody in the audience today who's tuned in to Partner in Focus number 2. Hope you learned more about Prime, more about DIA, and more about just generally the crypto industry at large, and some of the trends and narratives and some of the topics that we discuss on the back end here, and going back and forth between partnerships within DIA and teams that we collaborate with. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your Wednesday wherever you are, and we'll see you on the next episode of Partner in Focus. Take care, everybody. See you soon.